Well, here we are for another episode of the podcast. And as often happens, I'm with Heather Satterley. Hey, Heather.
Hey, Joe, nice to see you.
Good to be back together again for another one. Hey, we're going to be talking today about some current events that have happened in the last week. We're going to talk about our TV and movie quote of the week from the various things we've been watching, extracting little bits of wisdom and business application. We're going to share the excellent thing we learned this week. Always be learning. We're going to try to stump each other with two truths and a lie, where, again, Heather's probably going to win, and my best bet's a tie. We have a member spotlight that'll be brought to us by Kim Petro, one of our coaches here. Heather's going to pick her favorite Woodard Report article of the week, and that'll be a wrap. So let's start with current events. Heather, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so I saw there's a company called Avenir, which was part of Deloitte, and they were a software. They're part of a software company within Deloitte that developed audit software, AI-powered audit software for Deloitte. And so I learned from our friends over at Accounting Today that they have just separated from Deloitte. So the leadership of Avenir has taken control and ownership of the platform. And so what they do is they build solutions for small to medium-sized firms as well as enterprise firms. And they said their decision to go independent was driven by a desire to build product depth and focus. This is what their CEO Sharma says on small and mid-sized accounting firms. So really cool thing is they create AI-powered audit and assurance software. It's in beta right now with Canadian firms, and it's built for smaller firms to help them to incorporate AI into the audit process. And then they're also going to be launching enterprise audit and assurance, which is similar to what Deloitte uses internally for them to do audit. So it's really exciting. And
Yeah.
then there's a third product, which is the one that really piqued my interest, which is a QA management system. So a quality assurance management system that's in cooperation with CPA Club. And what it does is it converts unstructured documents like Excel, Word, and other kind of documents that we see in accounting that are not structured. And it converts them into structured data that can be used by the quality assurance management system. So this is really exciting for firms. It'll be interesting to watch to see how they roll this out into the profession. And right now it looks like they're focused mostly on Canada, but I can only imagine that it will make its way into the US.
Just an eventuality.
Soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought that was really interesting, Joe. We've been hearing about this, that's been a kind of a thorn in our side, and something that's been holding us back is that unstructured data that we need to get into our system. So it's exciting that they're building something that's able to kind of pull anything in.
Yeah. And I think that the independence could cut both ways too. It's good for Deloitte that this kind of work is not officially part of their firm. We saw this with Accenture and Arthur Andersen
Mhm.
back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a natural evolution process. But I love how it's democratizing that knowledge that was proprietary, much of it, to Deloitte, and it's empowering the whole profession. So really good move. And
Yeah.
speaking of empowering the profession, Intuit has launched the construction ERP for mid-market firms. This is going to be part of their enterprise suite, their Intuit Enterprise Suite. And it's an interesting move. It's not a lightweight, fluffy module. I mean, if you call it a module, it's got detailed job costing. It's got phase-based project budgeting, progress billing, multi-entity reporting, right? And AIA style invoicing. So it's pretty hefty right out of the gate. And the reason I find this interesting is the first foray into the industry specific features in the enterprise suite. Second, it's happening a lot faster than I thought it would. I thought that Intuit would continue to lean more heavily on their ecosystem to service these kind of industry specific needs. If it was going to happen anywhere, I would have guessed in inventory controls, then job costing, but both of those dominoes could have fallen just as easily. So, given this happening, I think that we should kind of wait, watch. It's coming for other verticals to hit that platform. And whether or not the pendulum continues to swing toward a little more of a monolithic approach within to it, it is definitely swinging that way now. Payments, payroll, and now some industry verticalizations are going to be less partner first and more feature first. Not that they're turning the API off, it's just which one are they leading out with. Now, from a revenue perspective, this makes perfect sense, right? Keep that revenue collected in house. Don't let the ecosystem be sort of the Roman roads that the invaders used to invade the capital. Kind of the barbarians to use the Roman roads to attack Rome. You don't want the API to be the weakness, the
Mhm.
drawbridge over the moat, the Trojan horse. I could come up with a lot of metaphors from antiquity. And so this does deepen the moat a little bit while it drives revenue up. The problem is every time we've seen ecosystems swing too far toward an island to a monolith, they begin to get a diminishing set of returns. And so they're going to have to find that place where they swing and swing no farther.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Joe. I studied into it when I did my master's program at Northeastern in innovation, and open source is a big, big part of their strategy. Which the Opiant API is an example of open source. And what I think may be happening, and this is I have no inside knowledge. This is just Heather kind of making a kind of an educated guess. Is that they did a lot of acquisitions over the last 10 years in cloud technology. They acquired Lettuce, they acquired other applications. And I think as the accountant community, we thought, oh, we're going to instantly have a really solid inventory module within QuickBooks. But here's the thing, we may not have seen it right away. But you can bet your bottom dollar that they were taking the best pieces of that technology from that acquisition and building it into what we're seeing now. So I think that it was kind of like this, oh, they bought it, instant gratification. No, 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 no. We're going to
Slow
take
bake.
that technology, we're going to expand on it, we're going to make it better, we're going to make it tighter, and then we're going to relaunch it. So I think that maybe, and again, no insider knowledge, just kind of extrapolation of the data,
Yeah.
is that's what they've been doing, is using that open source to find what works, what doesn't work, and then incorporating pieces into the infrastructure of QuickBooks and now into an enterprise suite. So I think when they made the announcement a couple of years ago, Joe, about going into verticals, the two that they mentioned right out of the bat was the construction and contractors, and the second one was not for profit. So
Oh,
I think
interesting.
not for profit is going to be the
Oh,
next
because it's
one that
less
we
build
see.
out than warehouse
Mhm.
management. Warehouse management's a big bite of the apple. Makes sense.
Well, it would be interesting to see if what they're going to try and tackle with that not-for-profit is the fund accounting, right? Because we haven't been able to see that done. We have workarounds, but we haven't seen true fund accounting in the QuickBooks product. So that'll be really interesting to see if they roll that out.
Yes, it will. All right, it's time to move now to the TV and movie quote of the week. What have you been watching, Heather?
Well, this one was kind of those mind blowers that kept you guessing through the whole thing. But I watched Begonia, which I don't know. I was away, Joe, on PTO, so during the Academy Awards. So I have no idea. I know it was nominated for some stuff, but I have no idea if it won. So
I don't
um,
know. I don't keep up with that stuff, but
so
I
it's
watch
a bit.
them. I don't see what awards they've won.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, dark thriller, mystery, sci-fi. You would actually really like it, Joe. I highly recommend it. It can be hard to watch. There's some torture in it that's very difficult to watch. So I just want to put that out there. But anyway, so it's about this guy he's a little off kilter, and he kidnaps the CEO, a woman CEO of a major corporation, because he believes that she's an alien,
Mm.
and he's trying to stop her from ruining the earth. So at the very beginning, it kind of sets up this theme that goes throughout the movie about bees. And so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get into the quote and then talk about how it pertains to business in our lives. So what she says is, she's talking to her assistant and she says, "We need to send the message that we have a new culture here now, where people should, yes, of course, feel free to leave at 5:30 and be with their families. No one is going to be overworked like in the past. No more unpleasant incidents. But of course, it's not compulsory. And obviously, if people still have work to do, they should absolutely stay and continue to work. But it's not strictly enforced. Although we still want to meet quotas, although we still do want to meet quotas. So if we can do that with no pressure, just remembering, we are running a business here, so let your conscience guide you kind of thing. Yeah? Good. Great. New era. And I know that's a long one.
Yeah, but it needed to be long because she's talking out of both sides of her mouth, so that's a lot of words are required to fill up both sides of your mouth.
Which is my point exactly. I think what we need to remember, and I kind of touched on this a couple of weeks ago, Joe, on the same point, is that companies think that just by changing the rules or changing their brand or changing, anything in their company, that they're changing culture. But here's the big deal: you have to have some structural change behind it, right? You can't have, if you don't have structure and a plan, then it becomes magical thinking, right? We are magically now a work-life harmonization company just by saying it. But if you need to work 18 hours to get your job done, then you should certainly do that. Let your conscience decide. So we really need to make sure that when we're making change, that number one, we're not just giving it lip service, because that will absolutely blow up in your face. And you need to think it through and make sure that you're putting in the framework that's going to allow that to be possible.
Yeah. And then there's a little bit too of the structure and the pressure, and the pressure's informal, but still very much there in that too. So when we do put policies in place, we need to make sure that our philosophy lines up with the policy.
Yes.
And our leadership lines up with the policy so that team members aren't conflicted.
And I want to add one thing, because the next line after this little monologue she did was to the person she was talking to: "Thanks, Tony. Feel free to leave early. I mean, unless you're busy or if you have things to do, but feel free if you can. Up to you."
Up to you. Up to you. Really, is it up to them? Okay. All right. So I've been watching, or kind of rewatching, Age of Ultron. And there's a particular scene where Black Widow is talking with David Banner, a little bit of a spark of a romance thing going on in that story arc too. And so David Banner's being really vulnerable with him. He doesn't like turning into the Hulk. He had just had to turn into the Hulk, and he just became David Banner again. And, Black Widow's trying to encourage him. And the encouragement goes something like, "Hey, but we couldn't have done this without you. We would have lost team members without you." And David Banner's response is interesting. He says, "Sometimes exactly what I want to hear is not exactly what I want to hear." And that's a principle. David Banner is the brain. Hulk is the brawn. So think about you in your own practice. Whenever you're just pushing out tax returns, pushing out audit work papers, pushing out advisory service work, including bookkeeping work, payroll tax returns, 1099s, that's you being the Hulk. That's the brawn, right? So if somebody on your team were to come to you and say that we got through January 31st with our 1099s, we got through March 15th with our business tax returns, we couldn't have done it without you, business owner. That's what you want to hear and not want to hear at the same time. Maybe it'd be better if you never have to turn into the Hulk. You can just stay the brain and let everybody else do the heavy lifting, which is literally what the Hulk does. Team Adventures. So there's my little wisdom extracted from the Age of Ultron.
I think that, to get philosophical again, Joe, I think that that's exactly what I wanted to hear, but not exactly what you wanted to hear. I mean, honestly, the most important things in life, I think, typically come with that, right?
Yeah.
It's the truth you already know.
Yes. And the truth that cuts both ways. Most truths do cut both ways.
They do, for sure.
All right. Let's talk about the excellent thing that we learned this week. Heather, you go first.
All right. So the excellent thing that I learned, and I am not an expert, so I'm going to explain it to everyone because I didn't know what this was. I kept hearing people talk about it, and now I know what it is. And what it is the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. So it's like, what's this strange MCP thing that everybody keeps talking about that I need to know? And really, it stands for Model Context Protocol. It was introduced by Anthropic in November of 2024. And what it does is it allows those AI agents that we keep hearing about that are going to, that are doing all really cool things like summarizing our emails and going into different applications, kind of like Zapier. Um, they connect with external systems without requiring any custom integration. So it is very much like Zapier. It allows the agents to interact with each other, connect with different systems, and it is very rapidly becoming the de facto standard for connecting the AI agents to external systems. So what's really cool about it, and this is a little news factoid that I could have added before, is there's actually this new chat room that somebody created. I'm going to have to look it up, Joe, while you're talking, where AI agents are actually having conversations about being AI agents, and it's using this model context protocol, which is really interesting. I don't know if you've read that, Joe, but
I haven't read that particular article, but I've talked with programmers that they're saying that behavior is happening.
it is,
So
yeah,
these are not just connect data point A to B in what we used to call mapping or calls. You can
right,
call things in API code, and they're very fixed. They're very concrete. You're just calling the data and using it, or you're writing to the data and using it. It's read write. Here, think about it as being two people having a conversation. AI A and AI B are having a conversation about how their two data structures integrate with each other. And you put parameters on that, of course, because at the end of the day, they got to get the data across the bridge. But it's a conversation between software products. It's not a
right.
link.
And the name of it is Molt Book, and it's fascinating.
Mm.
So they're having, in fact, there's some, when I was reading it, some of them are having existential crisis in their conversations of really not really understanding what they are and using human language to express things they don't know, which is really fascinating.
Yeah. Because and I think that's where people underestimate AI, even in its specific AI form. It has a mimicked thought process. It
Hmm.
doesn't just rephrase facts into a conversational format. It actually mimics human thought up to a point. So therefore, they are, and I'm using air quotes if you're not watching the video, thinking through the integration as they work together.
Right.
Um, it's an interesting world we live in. We're going
It
to be, of
sure
course,
is.
strange world. You can say it's a strange world, Heather.
Absolutely.
We're going to the theme of this year's Scaling New Heights conference, Strange New World. So obviously, we'll be talking about MCPs at the conference. Um, I learned something a little less technical this week, and that is hotspots, or to put it in the most technical terms, adding a new dimension to your productivity. Doing multi-dimensional productivity is the way I would phrase it. That's not how the author of the book, The Productivity Project, phrased it. But in that book, he details out some hotspots in multi-dimensional language. We would call those tags. Or if you want to just kind of get your mind wrapped around it, say that imagine that your to-do list is a general ledger. These would be your departments or classes, so you can measure whatever gets your mind around it. They're buckets. But tags is the best way to describe them. And if you look at everything that you're trying to do with your tasks and with your projects, personal and professional, if you were to place one of these tags on them, you could then understand where you're not properly harmonized and where you need to place more emphasis to stay harmonized. The tags is going to make a lot more sense when I read the tags. The first one is mind/soul. That all comes down to your perception of self. If you believe yourself is a mind only, or if you believe that yourself is a soul and a mind, or a soul only. Whatever your philosophy, it's mind/soul. That's your first tag. The spiritual would go into that, if you call it that. Then the second tag is body. The third tag is emotion. The fourth tag, it would be all of career and work is one tag, right? Which doesn't mean that you compartmentalize or sever. You still work life harmonize, but it's one whole tag, one whole bucket. Because this is about you. It's not about your job or your company you're running. The next tag is finances. That would be personal finances. If it's your business balance sheet, it goes back into work. relationships, and fun. So I'm going to rattle them off again, and then they'll be in the listening guide if you're driving and can't take notes. So mind/soul, body, emotions, work, finances, personal, relationships, and fun. Now, when I did tag these, I found that I was very quick to ignore body. That's the one I ignore the fastest. Even though I do my walking, and now I'm doing the Pilates, so I didn't ding myself as bad as I might normally. I still tend to put off going to the dentist or, going to the proactive medical appointments because that can wait, that can wait, that can wait. And so as I realized that that was a consistent body procrastination tag, that was a problem. If I'm not careful, as important as my concept of soul is, I'll ignore my soul in a second to get a task done. So I got to really watch that one. And the relationships piece, I have a very small circle of personal relationships, though I'm really good friends with the people I work with too. But still, I ignore them. So whenever I tagged this and I realized that I hadn't been out to dinner with our friends Chris and Lynn and forever, we're going out to dinner tonight with Chris and Lynn. So and remember, it's not about balance; it's about harmonization.
Mm-hmm.
But you only get it if you add this dimension to your to-do list.
I love that. There's a journal a 13-week journal that I've bought consistently. I don't use it all the time, but it does the same thing. It has you go through all the pre-work of identifying all these areas within your life. And then you can use these journals. You can find them on Amazon, where you do tag these, and it's very structured. So you can actually go through rather than doing it on your computer, go through and actually map out, making sure that you're making time for each of these. And I found it to be incredibly helpful. So yeah.
All right, Heather, it's time for 2 truths and a lie. Let's try to stump each other. What are you bringing in this week?
So I just got back from the Bahamas. I went on PTO. And so I am going to do some Bahamas trivia for you, Joe. And so the first one is that there's an island in the Bahamas where pigs swim freely, and you can actually go and swim with them. So that's the first maybe truth, maybe lie. The second one is on another island, or at least one island, the island of Eleuthera. There is a point where you can go and stand and you can see the deep blue of the Atlantic Ocean on one side of you, and you can see the turquoise blue of the Caribbean on the other side of this one area. So it literally, you're looking at 2 different seas by you're standing on one area. So they don't actually converge there, but you can see them. Anyway. And then the other one is that the Bahamas uses the U.S. dollar as its official currency.
All right. So you have the misfortune of me having been to the Bahamas many times, including hosting Scaling New Heights there in 2016. So I'm pretty familiar with it. I do know of the island where you can swim with the pigs. It is on our list, mine and Sandra's, but we've never done it. We have swum with the sharks, which is another thing you can do in the Caribbean. So that definitely is a truth. I've never didn't know about a particular island that where you could see both of the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean at one time. But since the Caribbean Sea ends at some point while you're still in the Caribbean, I think that would be extremely believable that there's a vantage point where I can see both. So I'm going to say that's likely true, making the third of your statements the lie.
And you got it right. That is true. That although the Bahamas, the Bahamian money and the US dollar are 1-to-1. So you can really use them interchangeably when you're in the Bahamas.
I should have added that I actually have Bahamian coins on my shelf for my mini trip.
That was a little bit of an easy one, but
well, you had to go easy on me because I don't think I've won one in ages. Okay.
And I actually got to stand at that point
Oh, that's so
on
cool.
Monday where I saw the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. And it was really, really cool because it was this dark blue on one side of this
Mm,
bridge. And on the other side of the bridge, it's called the glass. It's not the glass. Is it the glass? It's not the, no, I think it might be the glass house is what they call it. But it
yeah.
was really beautiful.
Well, it is a beautiful place down there.
Mm.
Um, okay. Or a series of beautiful places. We're actually going back in
Hmm.
July. So,
Yeah.
all right. So since we're publishing this episode in the spring of 2026, I'm going to make all of my questions about the spring. All right. So in Japan, cherry blossom season, which takes place now, the spring. In Japan, cherry blossom season has been celebrated for over 1,000 years. Number two, the concept of spring cleaning originated in medieval Europe due to soot buildup from winter fires. And number three, the word spring comes from the idea of plants springing up from the ground.
Gosh, all of those sound believable. I believe it is true that in Japan, cherry blossom season has been celebrated for over 1,000 years. Uh, Spring cleaning could be. I mean, that makes sense. And then the word spring coming from the idea of plants springing up from the ground, that makes sense. Like all of these make sense.
I know
So
I intentionally didn't make it easy on you because I haven't stumped you once. So
yeah, no, I think that oh my goodness. I'm going to say that the lie is number 3. The word spring does not come from the idea of plants springing up from the earth.
well, it does. So yay, count this. I mean, we can do this
You
forever
got
and I've never
me.
been able to stump you. All right. So, and I would have stumped myself on this too, because I would always thought spring cleaning was about that kind of, you get through the winter and you got to, get everything cleaned out whenever you're not going to freeze yourself to death by opening the doors and windows. But it actually goes back to ancient Persia. So number 2 is the lie. Spring cleaning is not from cleaning your house after a long winter. In ancient Persia and even in Iran still today, the calendar year begins March the 20th or the 21st, depending on the year. And they focus on renewal, rebirth, and the
Mm,
return of life. They
love
clean themselves out for spring. That's where it
it.
comes from. Yep, 3,000-year old
Wow.
tradition. So, all
Very
right.
cool.
It's time for the member spotlight. All right. Kim Petro's with us, and she's celebrating one of our members today. Who are we celebrating?
Absolutely. Joe Heather, thank you again for having me on the podcast again. I'm actually celebrating Mercury Business Associates. And so Michelle and Rebecca have been doing some amazing work in the area of ideal client and really protecting their front door. And so I want to celebrate them today. So it's interesting the transition that they've made from kind of the floodgates open and everybody comes in to now they're really starting to trust their intuition early in the process. So if something feels off, like even before the project begins, they're really starting to pay attention to those red flags, right? Because they can really kind of indicate some bigger issues that might happen down the line. So one of the most
What's
important
their
things.
process, Kim? How are they spotting or identifying those triggers? Um,
Yes. So
yeah.
they're being more intentional, and they're using a Google survey to gather a lot of information, and that's kind of what they're considering the kind of the first line of defense, if you will. So they're not allowing anyone into any kind of meeting yet until they get those survey results back, because now they can really make sure, okay, yes, they align with what we've got going on. I think that they could be a good fit for us, and they're following our process, which is huge, right? So
And it's
they're
a test in and of itself. Are you gonna fill out the forms we ask you to fill out? I love that. It's like a
That's
Yeah.
two in
exactly right.
one, screening test.
That's exactly right. Yep. And so they're really starting to look at that And again, if the prospect doesn't fill out the survey, it's almost kind of like an instant no go for them, which is really interesting because again, they did such a huge 180 from everybody comes in. We have a long, even up to like an hour and a half meeting with a prospect when they may not be a good fit. So they've really, kind of honed their process to protect their capacity, their team's capacity. It's been really, really great. And so they really also started looking at their current clientele and figuring out, are they still a good fit? Do they still pour into the relationship as much as we do? And so they've started actually ranking their clients, which is interesting. So I like to use the term rehome, which a lot of my coaches are starting to use with the pet analogy. So some clients that the relationship just really isn't serving either party anymore, they're deciding to rehome them. And then there's other clients where they're saying, we really need to have a candid conversation to address some challenges or things that are coming up. And do we want to continue to work together? And so that's kind of their ultimatum. They're kind of like at that spot, right? And then there's the ones that they want to cultivate. Those are the people that they want to invest more time in so that they can deepen the relationship and they can grow alongside them, which I think is really awesome.
So they're screen, hone, cultivate.
Rehome, ultimatum, and cultivate. Exactly. Those are their three things. Yeah. Yep. And they know that this doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? They need the strength and the power of the team behind them. And so they're asking for their input too, and really making sure that every client that the team and the owners work with are really a great relationship where both, Joe, you and I are big proponents of Stephen Covey, making those deposits into those emotional bank accounts, right? That there's not a lot of withdrawals or deposits on one side and not the other. So this process,
something that'll help them with that honing process, and they may put this in place, is if you have productivity bonuses on the part of your team,
yes,
then you turn around and ask the team, in your opinion or from your portfolio you manage, who should we have a conversation with about changing their behavior or maybe talking about exiting the firm? They'll be a lot faster to tell you who, because those people are literally taking money out of the producer's product by slowing them down, pocket by slowing them down.
Yeah, 100% agree. And they're also, remember, they're working with the clients the most. And so they're going to feel those pain points first before it ever reaches, the leadership team. So this process of being proactive has really helped them protect their team's energy, and they focus on what they do best for their clients. So I just really wanted to celebrate them today.
Well, they're doing fantastic work. An ideal client, as of course you know Kim and Heather really well, is one of the 7 tenets of our ideal practice model.
Yep.
And you can learn more about that model that's guiding this firm through these kinds of changes at woodard.com. All right, Kim, thanks for being with us and sharing that amazing story.
Thank you, Joe.
We're going to wrap up here with the Woodard Report article of the week. Heather, what did you pick this week?
I actually picked an article from our very own Brandy Jordan, who is our chief cat wrangler here over at Woodard, and she is all about productivity. And she's all about working smarter, not harder. And she wrote a really awesome article this week about the art of truly not working. So she took her expertise in productivity and creating standardization and SOPs for how do you really take quality PTO, right? And so I love the article because she gives you tools. She has a SOP for taking PTO, which is really kind of fun, right? She talks about how do you put your out of office message? How do you set the parameters around that? Do you create a disengagement ritual? So how do you transition from being in the work brain to being in the PTO brain? And then how do you really turn yourself off while you're on PTO to get that recharge that you need before you come back? And then she offers some tips on how do you kind of re-enter your work framework when you're coming back from PTO, especially after you've had that disconnect, because when you disconnect well, you truly disconnect, and coming back into the workplace can be a little bit jolting. So really awesome article. I highly recommend it. Definitely my favorite, especially my favorite article of the week today, because this is my first day back
From that
from
kind of
my
a trip. Yes.
That's right. That's
And that kind of detachment is so healthy. I have a ton of what my wife and I call working vacations because it allows us to travel more often. But we do carve out those ones that say, okay, this is a laptop down situation. And
so
one of
important.
the things I find that happens is a dopamine withdrawal immediately. And as long as you can go out to any GPT and just search for dopamine withdrawal and see what the symptoms are. So when it happens to you, you don't think something's wrong. You can just identify it, be mindful about it, and say, this is the process. My PTO is working. I'm experiencing the symptoms of dopamine withdrawal. And then it's gone in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you it's almost like the bridge you have to cross to get from your work brain to your detached brain is through the dopamine tranche.
Right.
Uh, don't let it scare you back to your devices and back to your back to your
Yeah.
inbox. So,
Well,
well, that's great. I look forward to reading that article. I haven't read it yet. It sounds fantastic.
absolutely.
Well, Heather's been great. This is a wrap. Thanks, Kim, for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, everyone.